Amira grew up in the city of Okolima, where people spoke her name with respect. She was the daughter of Justice Malu, a man feared in the courtroom and admired in society. Their family lived in a grand house with tall gates, expensive cars, and servants who bowed whenever they walked past. From the time she was a little girl, Amira was told she must carry the pride of her family. Her father often reminded her that her future husband had to come from a powerful home, someone with a title and wealth equal to theirs. Even her mother would say, "You are not like other girls, Amira. You are a Malu. Your choices must honor our name." Amira listened silently, but inside, her heart longed for something different. She wanted love, not just status. Still, in public, she played the role of the perfect daughter, graceful, educated, and untouchable. Everyone in Okolima believed her life was already set, that she would marry into another rich family, and that her future would always shine with comfort. But Amira carried a secret dream deep inside her chest, a dream that would soon collide with her family's pride and change everything. Would you like me to now expand part 2? The waiter who stole her heart in the same style and detail? It was on a quiet afternoon, after one of her long lectures at the university, that Amira stepped into a small cafe near the campus. Unlike the fancy restaurants her parents preferred, this cafe was simple: wooden chairs, the smell of fresh coffee, and soft music in the background. That was where she first saw Jelani. He wore a plain black apron, moving quickly between tables, carrying trays with a smile that seemed to touch everyone he served. When their eyes met, Amira felt something unexpected, something she had never felt with the polished men her parents introduced to her. He walked over with a polite bow and said, "Good afternoon, would you like tea or coffee?" His voice was calm, respectful, yet filled with warmth. Amira smiled without realizing it. As days passed, she returned again and again, pretending it was for the coffee, but deep inside it was for him. Jelani was different. He had no gold watch, no expensive shoes, but his words carried weight. He spoke about his dreams of building something greater, of creating opportunities for young people who, like him, started with nothing. Amira listened closely, surprised at how intelligent and passionate he was. Rich suitors often bored her with talk of cars and parties, but Jelani's words made her heart race. One afternoon, as the rain tapped on the cafe windows, they sat talking longer than usual. Jelani looked at her and said softly, "People see me as just a waiter, but I believe where you start doesn't decide where you end." Amira's chest tightened. In that moment she realized this was not just admiration. This was the beginning of love. A love that would soon test everything she thought she knew about life, family, and courage. Do you want me to continue with part 3? When love became a sin in the same emotional style. Amira kept her secret for weeks, hiding the glow in her eyes every time she returned from the cafe. But love has a way of spilling out, and one evening, as the family sat down for dinner in their grand dining room, she finally gathered the courage to speak. With her hands trembling, she whispered, "Mother, Father, there is someone I love." Her mother looked up with curiosity, her father with expectation. They thought she was finally ready to accept one of the wealthy suitors they had been introducing. But when Amira said the name Jelani, the waiter from the cafe, the air in the room changed instantly. Her mother's spoon fell from her hand with a sharp clatter against the plate. Her eyes widened, her face pale with shock. "A waiter!" she gasped, pressing her hand to her chest as though her daughter had cursed the family. Her father, Justice Malu, slammed his fist on the table so hard the glasses shook. His voice thundered across the room. "You dare speak such shame under my roof? My daughter, the child of Malu, speaking of love with a common waiter." His eyes burned with anger, his pride wounded. Amira's heart raced, but she did not back down. She said softly, "He is kind, he is hard-working, and he has dreams, father. He is more real than any rich man you've brought to me." Her mother shook her head in disbelief, tears forming as if Amira had betrayed her. "People will laugh at us. Do you want to drag our name into the mud?" Her father's voice grew colder. "Love," he sneered. "Love does not feed a family. Love does not carry honor. You are blinded, Amira. This is not love, it is disgrace." That night, her confession did not bring joy. Instead, it became the sin that shattered the walls of her home. The girl who had once been her father's pride now stood at the edge of rejection, all because she chose the heart of a man the world called just a waiter. Do you want me to continue with part 4? The harsh ultimatum in the same way? The house was silent the next morning, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of anger. Amira walked into the living room and found her father seated in his large leather chair, his face stern, his eyes dark with disappointment. Her mother stood near the window, her arms folded tightly as if holding herself together. Without lifting his gaze, Justice Malu said in a low but sharp voice, "Amira, this ends today. You will end this foolishness with that boy." Amira swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "Father, I cannot. I love him." That was when her father finally looked up, his jaw clenched, his words slicing like a knife. "Then hear me clearly. Choose him and you are no longer my daughter. You will walk out of this house with nothing. No wealth, no name, no protection. You will be dead to me." Her mother's eyes filled with tears, but she did not plead for gentleness. Instead, she whispered, "Don't throw away your life for a man who cannot give you even a roof." Amira's chest ached as she looked at the mansion around her. The polished floors, the sparkling chandeliers, the life of comfort she had always known. Yet when she closed her eyes, she saw Jelani's smile, his determination, and the way he spoke of dreams bigger than himself. For the first time, she realized that love was not about what she stood to lose, but about what she could build together with him. Her father leaned forward, his voice final. "Decide now, Amira. Family or a waiter?" Tears blurred her vision, but deep inside, she knew her answer. Her heart whispered louder than fear. She could not give up the man who made her feel alive. The ultimatum had been thrown, and Amira's world would never be the same again. Do you want me to continue with part 5? Choosing love over luxury in the same heartfelt emotional detail? That night, Amira sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the walls she had known all her life. The golden curtains, the soft carpet, the chandelier above her. It all felt like a cage now. Her father's words still echoed in her ears, sharp and final. "Choose him and you are no longer my daughter." Her mother had not come to comfort her. The silence of the mansion felt heavier than chains. With trembling hands, she opened her closet and pulled out a small bag. She did not take jewelry or fine dresses, only a few simple clothes she could fold quickly. Every item she placed inside felt like a goodbye. Her tears fell silently, but her heart whispered with courage. At midnight, she opened her door quietly, her footsteps soft on the marble floor. When she reached the main gates, the guards looked at her in shock. One of them muttered under his breath, "The judge's daughter is throwing her life away." Another shook his head, whispering, "She will regret this." Their words pierced her, but she did not stop walking. Outside, the city lights of Okolima twinkled like stars, but for Amira, the night was darker than ever. She pulled her small bag closer and lifted her chin. Ahead was uncertainty, a life with no promises, but in her heart, there was a fire no mansion could give her. When she finally reached the small street where Jelani lived, he opened the door in surprise. "Amira," he whispered, his voice breaking when he saw her teary eyes and the bag in her hand. Without waiting for explanation, he pulled her into his arms. She felt safe even in that tiny, humble home. She had left behind wealth, name and luxury. But in that moment as she held Jelani close, Amira knew she had chosen love. And love gave her a strength no riches ever could. Do you want me to continue with part 6? The struggles of poverty in the same deep emotional style? Days slowly turned into weeks, and reality hit Amira like cold water. The mansion she had once called home was now only a memory. She and Jelani shared a small room at the edge of the city, its roof leaking whenever the rain poured. At night, they sometimes huddled together on their worn-out mattress, listening to drops of water hitting the floor, praying it wouldn't flood. Food was never enough. There were nights when dinner was nothing more than a piece of bread and weak tea. Jelani worked double shifts at the cafe, coming home late with tired eyes and aching feet. Amira, who had once worn silk dresses, now sat in the crowded market selling jewelry she made with her own hands. Her soft palms grew rough from the work, but she never complained. Some days neighbors whispered as she passed by, "Look at her, the judge's daughter reduced to this." Their words stung, but she walked on with her head high. She reminded herself that she hadn't been forced into this life. She had chosen it, chosen love. One evening, as she sat waiting for customers, a rich girl she once knew walked by. Dressed in designer clothes, she laughed with friends and sneered at Amira. "So this is where love brought you?" she mocked. Amira's heart ached, but she forced a smile. When she returned home that night, Jelani noticed her silence. He held her hand and whispered, "Amira, one day you will not remember these nights. I promise." Though hunger was real and their struggles heavy, the warmth of their love made the small room feel brighter. Every time they laughed together, every time they shared their dreams, Amira knew she hadn't ruined her life. She had only begun a different journey, one that pain could not destroy. Do you want me to move on with part 7? The hidden truth about Jelani in the same powerful way? To everyone in Okolima, Jelani was just a waiter, a young man carrying trays and cleaning tables. People looked at him and saw nothing more than a uniform and a tired smile. But behind closed doors, when the city was asleep, Jelani was someone else entirely. Every night after his long shifts at the cafe, he would sit at the small wooden table in their leaking room, open his old laptop, and dive into a different world. He read books on business, watched lectures online, and wrote down plans that filled worn-out notebooks. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but his spirit burned brighter. He believed deeply that life could change, not just for him but for Amira too. He didn't want her to spend her life selling jewelry in the market. He wanted her to one day live in a home where no rain could leak through the roof. Amira often woke up at midnight and found him still at the table, scribbling ideas under the dim light bulb. She would whisper, "Jelani, you need rest." But he would smile at her and reply softly, "Rest will come when the dream is real. For now I must build it." She didn't fully understand what he was working on, but she admired his determination. Where others saw only poverty, she saw a man shaping a future with bare hands and stubborn faith. The world outside mocked her for choosing a waiter, but in her heart, Amira knew she had chosen more than that. She had chosen a man who refused to let his background define him. A man who carried vision bigger than his circumstances. Unknown to the city, unknown even to his in-laws who once rejected him, Jelani was silently preparing to turn his struggles into the very power that would change their destiny forever. Shall I continue with part 8? The years of silent building in the same emotional storytelling style? The years rolled by, and life tested Amira and Jelani in every possible way. People in Okolima never forgot her choice. Whenever she walked through the market, women whispered, "There goes the foolish girl who threw away gold for a waiter." Even some of her old friends avoided her, afraid to be seen with someone who had fallen so low. Amira carried the pain quietly, but each time she came home and saw Jelani working late into the night, she reminded herself why she had chosen him. Jelani, on the other hand, refused to let the mockery break him. He saved every coin from his cafe shifts, often skipping meals just to put money aside. Slowly, with patience and determination, he bought a second-hand bicycle. At first, he used it to make small deliveries for shopkeepers in the neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Amira watched him leave at dawn and return at night, sweaty and tired, yet with a spark in his eyes. What began with one bicycle grew step by step. Soon, he hired another young man from the streets to help with deliveries. Word spread quickly. People liked Jelani's honesty, his punctuality, and his respect. The little service became known as reliable, something rare in the busy city. Investors who noticed his discipline started giving him small contracts. With each chance, Jelani expanded, buying another bicycle, then a motorbike, and eventually a small van. Amira often sat with him at night as he drew plans on scraps of paper. "One day, this will not just be a small service," he told her with a quiet smile. "It will be a company." She believed him even when the world laughed. In silence, away from the eyes that mocked them, Jelani was building brick by brick. What everyone thought was a waiter's struggle was, in truth, the foundation of an empire waiting to rise. Do you want me to continue with part 9? The first spark of success in the same emotional cinematic style? The turning point came quietly, almost unnoticed at first. One morning, Jelani returned home with a contract in his hand. His eyes were glowing as he showed it to Amira. "They want us to handle deliveries for 3 major shops in the city," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. Amira's heart leapt, and she hugged him tightly. After years of struggle, it was the first real door that opened. From that moment, things began to change. With the little savings he had and the trust of a few investors, Jelani registered his company and gave it a name, TransLink Africa. The name itself carried a vision, a dream of connecting people and businesses across the continent. Amira watched with pride as he carefully designed the first logo, a simple mark that soon began appearing on the side of delivery vans. Where once people mocked him as just a waiter, they now started whispering his name with curiosity. Vans with the TransLink logo rolled through the busy streets of Okolima, carrying goods for shops, restaurants, and even offices. The sight of those vehicles filled Amira with tears, because she remembered the days when their only asset had been a single bicycle. But success did not erase the memory of hardship. Jelani never forgot the nights they went to bed hungry, or the insults thrown at Amira. Instead, he used that pain as fuel to work harder. While the world saw a rising businessman, he remained humble, still the same man who once carried trays with a smile. For Amira, every van she saw was more than just a vehicle. It was proof of their sacrifice, their resilience, and their unshakable love. Slowly, the man mocked as a nobody was becoming a hidden empire builder, preparing to shock the very people who had once turned their backs on him. Do you want me to move on with part 10, the gala invitation, in the same vivid, emotional way? The morning was quiet when the knock came at their door. Amira opened it and found a neatly dressed courier holding a golden envelope. She frowned, thinking it must have been delivered by mistake. But when she read the bold letters on the front, Mr. Jelani Okoro, CEO, TransLink Africa, her hands began to shake. She rushed inside and placed it on the table where Jelani was working. He looked at it with surprise, then carefully broke the seal. Inside was an elegant card with shining letters. You are cordially invited to the Okolima Business Gala. For a moment he said nothing. His eyes simply lingered on the invitation, as though he was making sure it was real. Amira's heart swelled with emotion. The business gala was not just another event, it was the most prestigious gathering in the city. Only the most powerful business leaders, government officials, and dignitaries were invited. It was the same event her father and mother had attended every year, walking proudly among the elite. Now, the boy they once mocked as a waiter was not only on the guest list, he was invited as a CEO. Amira's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Do you realize what this means, Jelani? You are no longer the man people look down on. You are walking into the very circle that once shut you out." Jelani smiled gently, taking her hands in his. "It's not just my victory, Amira. It's ours. Every sacrifice, every tear, every insult we endured brought us here. Now they will see." For the first time, Amira imagined the faces of her parents when they would see his name announced in that grand hall. The golden envelope was more than an invitation. It was the beginning of a moment that would shake the pride of Okolima to its core. Do you want me to continue with part 11? The family's arrogance in the same dramatic and emotional way? The grand hall of the Okolima Business Gala glittered with chandeliers and the hum of important voices. Justice Malu and his wife entered with the same pride they carried everywhere, dressed in the finest clothes, their heads high as if the room belonged to them. People greeted them with respect, bowing slightly, whispering about the judge's power and influence. His wife smiled coldly, her eyes scanning the room as though searching for who was worthy to sit near them. As they took their seats, Justice Malu leaned toward a fellow guest and said with a smug tone, "These gatherings remind us who truly carries weight in this city. The rest are just noise." His wife nodded, sipping her wine, her eyes gliding past business owners she thought too small to matter. They laughed at newcomers who nervously introduced themselves, dismissing their efforts with polite but cutting remarks. In their minds, no one in that room could rise above the Malu family's status. Their arrogance was a shield, covering the shame of the daughter they had cast out years ago. To them, Amira no longer existed. She was a closed chapter erased from their lives. If anyone dared to bring up her name, her mother would scoff. She chose poverty. Let her live with the dust she ran to. Justice Malu, with his usual coldness, would respond, "She made her choice. We have no daughter." As the evening grew brighter, they sat back comfortably, expecting another night where their pride would shine. They believed the world still revolved around their name. What they did not know was that the star of the night, the man the whole city had come to see, was the same man they had once called worthless. The waiter they despised was about to walk into the hall as a king, and their arrogance was seconds away from shattering. Do you want me to continue with part 12? The CEO's grand entrance in the same emotional, cinematic style? The hall was alive with music and chatter when the announcer's voice rose above the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jelani Okoro, CEO of TransLink Africa." For a second, silence fell. Then heads turned, eyes widened and gasps rippled across the room. Through the tall glass doors Jelani entered, dressed in a sharp black suit that carried power without arrogance. His shoulders were straight, his steps confident, and on his chest shone the badge that carried his new identity. No one saw a waiter anymore. They saw a leader, a man who had built an empire from nothing. But the true shock came when he extended his hand, and Amira walked beside him. Dressed in a graceful African gown of deep royal blue, her head held high, she looked radiant. For years, people had mocked her as the foolish girl who chose love over money. Tonight, she stood in the grandest hall of Okolima, not as someone forgotten, but as the wife of a man the entire city had come to respect. Jelani didn't let go of her hand for even a second. He led her through the hall with pride, his eyes telling everyone clearly, "This is my wife, my partner, my strength." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Is that Amira? The judge's daughter? But they said she ruined her life? No, look at her now. Justice Malu and his wife froze in their seats. Her mother's glass slipped slightly in her hand, her face pale with disbelief. Justice Malu clenched his jaw, his pride cracking as he stared at the man he once called nothing. The entire hall rose to applaud, the sound echoing through the walls. Jelani smiled, leaning toward Amira, whispering softly, "This is our moment." And with her hand locked in his, they walked forward as equals, proving that true love had not only survived, but conquered. Do you want me to continue with part 13? The parents' silent collapse in the same dramatic and emotional way? Justice Malu sat frozen in his chair, the applause around him echoing like thunder in his ears. His face, once so full of pride, slowly drained of color. His lips pressed into a hard line, but his eyes betrayed him, wide, unsettled and almost afraid. He had spent years telling himself that his daughter had chosen shame, that she had thrown her life into the dust. Yet here she was, walking into the grandest hall in the city, hand in hand with a man the whole room now respected. Beside him, his wife trembled. Her hands shook so badly that her glass slipped, spilling wine onto the tablecloth. She could hardly breathe as she whispered under her breath, It cannot be Amira." But she knew it was. The same daughter she had dismissed, the same girl she had called foolish, now looked like a queen before the city. Memories rushed back to both of them. The night Amira had stood in their living room, begging them to see her love, the night they had slammed the door on her and told her she was no longer their child. They remembered the tears in her eyes, the small bag in her hand, the way she had walked out of their gates under the whispers of guards who believed she had ruined her life. And now, years later, the man they had spat upon, the man they had dismissed as just a waiter, stood taller than them. His badge read CEO, and the entire city bowed to his success. The silence between Justice Malu and his wife was heavy. Neither dared to speak because deep inside they both knew. This was the collapse of their pride. They had disowned their daughter, but destiny had placed her higher than their arrogance ever could. And nothing was more painful than watching the child they threw away rise above them in glory. Do you want me to continue with part 14? The lesson the city learned in the same powerful and emotional tone? The whispers began in the corners of the hall, soft at first, but within minutes they spread like wildfire across the city of Okolima. That's Amira, the judge's daughter who was cast out. She chose love over money and now look, she is the wife of a CEO. People repeated the words again and again, each whisper carrying shock, admiration and awe. For years Amira had been the cautionary tale, the girl mocked for leaving wealth behind for a poor waiter. Mothers used her name to warn their daughters, saying, "Don't be like Amira, or you will suffer." Men laughed, calling her foolish. Even friends turned their backs, convinced she had ruined her life forever. But tonight, those same lips spoke her name with respect. What once was mockery had now become inspiration. In every corner of the city, her story began to echo. Women told each other, "It's not wealth that makes a man, it's his vision." Young men said, "If a waiter can rise to a CEO, then nothing is impossible." Even elders who once criticized her now shook their heads in shame, realizing they had misjudged love. Amira stood tall, not with arrogance but with quiet grace. She did not need to gloat or remind anyone of their past insults. Her presence alone was enough. Jelani's success, built from sweat, sleepless nights and faith, was not just his victory. It was proof that dignity and persistence can defeat pride. That night, Okalima learned a lesson no book or courtroom could teach. Never look down on love, never despise humble beginnings, and never mock the ones who choose with their hearts. Because sometimes the very people you laugh at become the ones you rise to applaud. Do you want me to continue with part 15? The triumph of love, and wrap up the story in the same emotional and cinematic way? As the music played softly and the applause still echoed in the hall, Jelani leaned close to Amira. His voice was tender but steady when he whispered, "I told you this was not forever." Those words carried the weight of every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of hunger they had endured together. Amira's eyes glistened as she looked at him. She did not smile with pride or arrogance, but with deep gratitude. Her heart replayed their journey. The night she walked out of her father's mansion with nothing but a small bag. The day she sat in the market selling jewelry. The night she found him bent over his books while the world slept. Every sacrifice had led to this moment. In that grand hall with the city watching, Amira and Jelani stood not as victims of rejection, but as symbols of resilience. What was meant to shame them had turned into their crown. Their love had grown stronger in struggle, and their story now lived on the lips of everyone in Okalima. People would remember them not just as the judge's daughter and the waiter, but as the couple who proved that faith and love could rewrite destiny. That night they walked out of the gala hand in hand, carrying no bitterness in their hearts, only victory. Their rejection had become their triumph, and their love, a legacy the city would never forget. Do you want me to stitch together all 15 parts into one full 4,000-word script, so you have the complete story in one flow?